All right, folks, thanks for checking out the video. I wanted to talk briefly about the 2023 Chicago mayoral election. So, polls have closed, the results are in, and incumbent Mayor Lori Lightfoot, aka Beetlejuice, has been resoundingly defeated in her bid for a second term. You can see here she finished in third place, or she's currently in third place with 98% of precincts reporting. She has 16.9% of the vote. So, in the format of the Chicago mayoral election, if nobody gets 50%, then the top two candidates will advance to a runoff, which is on April 4th. And the top two candidates currently are Brandon Johnson. Well, I guess they've called it. So the runoff is going to be between Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallas. Paul Vallas had 33.9% of the vote, and Brandon Johnson has 20.3% of the vote. So, in about 5 weeks from now, they will go head to head in the general election. So, a little bit about both candidates. Brandon Johnson, you can see him here from the Chicago Tribune, says Brandon Johnson has served in the Cook County Board of Commissioners since 2018 when he defeated incumbent Richard Boykin in the first district that covers the western suburbs and west side of Chicago. Johnson is the son of a pastor and worked as a social studies teacher at Edward Jenner Academy in Cabrini Green until 2010. Now, from what I could tell, Brandon Johnson is heavily backed by the teachers' unions in Chicago and is somebody that is actually running to the left of Lori Lightfoot. So he's very far left and doesn't seem like he would do anything to sort of course correct in Chicago. In fact, he's going to double and triple down on Lori Lightfoot's policies. So he doesn't really seem to be a very good option. And the other guy in the runoff is Paul Vallas. You can see him here. And it says a former City Hall insider who has campaigned as both an expert administrator and outside the box thinker. Paul Vallas rose to local prominence as Chicago Public Schools CEO, serving under Mayor Richard M. Daley. He ran unsuccessfully for governor in 2002, losing to Rod Blagojevich in the Democratic primary. For lieutenant governor in 2016, losing alongside Pat Quinn to Bruce Rauner, and for mayor in 2019. So Paul Vallas is somebody running as basically a centrist. He's a Democrat. He's a lifelong Democrat. He's a leftist, but he's more, at least, to the center than Brandon Johnson is. So, from what I could tell, he has the backing of most of the police and fire organizations in Chicago, and he's campaigning big on the crime epidemic in Chicago, as well as trying to crack down on some of the teachers unions in Chicago that are not doing a good job and haven't done a good job really ever there in Chicago. So um, now I think it's a pretty clear distinction here. You have one guy in Brandon Johnson who's running again, like I said, as a far leftist. He's going to be in the pockets of the teachers unions. He's not going to do anything about crime in Chicago. He's just going to keep doing whatever Lori Lightfoot and her predecessors have been doing, which obviously is not working. So if I was in Chicago, I don't live in Illinois, I don't live in Chicago, so I don't have a vote. But I would probably vote for Paul Vallas as the better of the two candidates. Again, I don't think either one's really a great choice, but that's who I would vote for. Now, very interesting that Lori Lightfoot will be the first mayor of Chicago in 40 years not to be reelected. She's had some highlights or lowlights, if you will, in her one term as mayor. She famously said that 99% of her critics are racist and sexist. So again, not somebody that's going to be introspective and try to course correct and try to do the right thing for the citizens of Chicago. No, it's my critics. They're the problem, not me. And she famously at one point instituted an interview policy where she said that she would only conduct interviews with, quote, journalists of color, which she had to backtrack on after she was rightfully sued over that policy. So she's been a complete disaster for Chicago. Obviously, there wasn't a COVID restriction or lockdown or mandate that she didn't support. So, on one hand, it's very good to see her kicked to the curb. I'm happy to see that. So, the voters of Chicago will now have their say in do they want to double down on the policies that they just rejected in Lori Lightfoot, or do they want to try something a little bit different with Paul Vallas? So we will see what happens in 5 weeks. So let me know what you all think. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.